Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know last week we covered a very interesting topic, which was what is cloud computing. Now, today we're going to make things a bit interesting. We are going to look at the comparison between on premise computing and cloud computing. Now, it's very important for us to understand that on premise computing is the foundation on which cloud computing was actually built on. So, now let's look at the agenda. Cool. So, firstly, we're going to define on premise computing and also define cloud computing. Then look at the differences between these two, and then look at the pros and cons of on premise computing and cloud computing. And then, lastly, we are going to look at the key factors to consider on deciding whether you should stay on prem or you should migrate to the cloud. Let's get into it. Okay, so what is cloud computing and what is on premise computing? Now, if you remember previously, we had said that cloud computing is the delivery of computing resources over the internet. And now this is offered by the cloud providers such as AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. On the other hand, on premise computing refers to the organization's computing infrastructure, which includes physical data centers owned and overseen by the organization. Now, here, both the hardware and software are installed and operated within the organization's premise. So, an organization basically has to buy physical assets, physical infrastructure that they would basically manage on their own. There's no reliance on cloud service providers. So it's still the same concept. It's just the difference when it comes to where it is located and who are the service providers, right? So now looking at the key differences between these two. So starting off with cloud computing. So cloud computing under the section of control, this is basically a shared responsibility with cloud providers, and it also depends on the cloud service model. So remember, on last week's video, we said that there is software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, which actually gives you more control over your infrastructure, right? When you look at on-premise, in terms of control, the organization has complete control over the infrastructure and the data. Security, well, when you go to security, cloud computing relies heavily on the cloud provider. So your security posture is heavily reliant on how good your cloud provider actually is. So it's very important that you choose the best cloud provider that can offer you the best security services that actually satisfy your needs, right? And on premises now, here there's a high reliance on in house IT sort of resources. So you need to have a skilled IT department that is able to sort of protect your IT resources from any cybersecurity incidents or any security breaches. From a costing perspective, cloud computing offers the pay as you go model. So this basically means you only pay for what you use. There's no intensive capital expenditure that you need to pay upfront. So you just get started and only pay for what you actually use. In terms of on premises, now here there is high capital expenditure because you actually need to acquire those physical resources that you need in order to run your business. You need to get your servers, your databases, and all those different components that you need to run your own data center. When it comes to scalability, cloud computing makes it easy for you to expand or even scale down depending on the demand. So, if the demand is high for your services, you are able to get more resources automatically allocated to you in order for you to meet the demand from your customers. And if the demand is low, you can easily scale down and have less resources dedicated to you so that you can use what you actually need. On the other hand, scalability is an issue when it comes to on premise. Now, the reason being, you would need to actually purchase additional hardware in order for you to scale up or meet the demand of your customers. And if the demand actually goes down, you might have resources that are sitting idling and not actually getting utilized. Now, when it comes to dependency, um, cloud computing is heavily reliant on the internet because the internet is the medium by which we actually get access to our computing resources. On premise, it's different. So there's no dependency on the external provider or the internet because this is an in house sort of function. You've got them physically located in your organization. and looking at the location. So this is actually dependent on your cloud providers, where your cloud provider is located, how many data centers do they have around the world. When you compare to on-premise, it's literally on your premise as an organization. So it's not like it's dependent on the cloud providers. It's dependent on where you're located and where you keep your data centers. Right. So now looking at the pros and cons of cloud computing. Now, firstly, the pros for cloud computing is that it requires less capital because you only pay for what you use. There's no upfront sort of like capital expenditure. You basically pay on what you use. It is easy to scale. You get databases, resources allocated to you whenever the demand is high, and whenever the demand is low, you can easily scale down so that you don't have resources that are not being utilized. Global reach. Now, it's very important that you understand these organizations, the cloud service providers, are located in different places all over the world. And this actually makes it easy for you to have a global presence and to be available in different geographic locations. Automatic updates. Now, these cloud service providers can basically implement automatic software updates onto your applications, whatever applications that you'll be using, and even security patches for you to meet compliance requirements. Right. So, looking at the cons, well, obviously, because this is provided by an external cloud provider, you've got limited control over your infrastructure and data, and which is why you'd need to choose the best sort of like a cloud model, whether you want to use platform as a service or you want to use infrastructure as a service. Security concerns. Now, some organizations are concerned about giving all of this control to these cloud providers. And I guess it's very important here that you choose the cloud provider that you actually trust or believe can actually protect your resources and the risk of vendor lock-in. Now, once you choose your cloud provider, it is difficult in the event that you decide to move to another one. It becomes difficult for you to migrate into another one. It can be quite expensive, and the amount of data that you would have created within the cloud sort of like vendor that you had chosen becomes an issue when you're actually migrating that huge amount of data. Now, then, let's look at the on premise. When you look at on premise, well, the pros basically here is that you've got complete control over your infrastructure and data because this is literally your data center and the infrastructure and resources are owned by you, independence from the internet. So you cannot be disrupted by the internet as much as the cloud computing providers would actually face. In terms of the cons, there is a high initial expense. Like you need to actually get land, you need to actually purchase those resources, you need to invest in hardware, get licensing. So there is a very huge upfront cost for this model. And there's a challenge in scaling up and scaling down because remember, you actually need to purchase these resources whenever the demand is high, and when the demand is low, you actually end up having resources that you're not using. And then the need for skilled IT resources. Now, it's very important to understand that if you choose to have your own sort of like on-premise infrastructure, you need to know how to protect it because hackers could be attacking your resources, and you need to have a very strong cybersecurity team to ensure that the resources are protected and managed effectively, or for you to also meet compliance requirements. Now, moving on to the key factors to consider. Now, there's certain things you need to consider when you are deciding whether should I stay in the cloud or should I move on-prem or should I stay on-prem, should I migrate or not migrate. I think these are the key factors you should basically consider. So there's five of them. The first one, migration cost and migration approach. So the migration cost, if it is very expensive for you to migrate from on-premise to the cloud, I think you need to sort of like reconsider whether you should or should not. And the approach at which you migrate. So sometimes it is a lift and shift, like totally copying all of the data from infrastructure and moving it onto the cloud service provider. And it's very important for you to understand the migration process can be very complex. So think about the migration approach that actually works for your organization. Do you want to move all of your data or sort of like IT resources on the cloud, or do you want to move a portion of them or keep some of them there, or do you want to move the new ones that you're planning on implementing and keeping the old ones? So it depends on what you actually think is best for your organization, right? Regulation and compliance. So you need to also think about regulation and compliance, and whether moving to the cloud can help you achieve those regulations, regulatory compliance, or sort of like could make it difficult for you to meet regulation and be compliant. And thirdly, legacy systems. Now, some systems may not be compatible with some of the cloud, sort of in environment may not be compatible with the cloud environment, and you'd need to consider whether you'd move some of them or you'd keep some of them in your sort of like on-prem data center. So those are some of the things you need to think about. Not all your sort of applications, IT resources would be compatible with some of the cloud provider services that are currently in place. Although the cloud service providers are working hard in ensuring that they cover all sort of like the IT systems, but sometimes it is best for you not to migrate due to the legacy systems that you're keeping. And also alignment of IT with the business goals. Now, you might find that maybe as an organization, you'd like to fully focus on your customers and sort of leave the whole responsibility of managing IT resources to this cloud provider so that you can actually satisfy your customers better. Or maybe you've got a transformation strategy that requires you to move to the cloud. So make sure that you align IT with business goals. So if there's a business, if moving to the cloud actually aligns with your business goals, then I think you should do it. But if it doesn't, then you shouldn't. Now, resource management, right? This is very important because when you choose to stay on-prem, you need to have the right team or the right skills to ensure that you manage your resources and protect them from attackers or anything of that nature. So it's very important to consider that whether you have enough resources to manage this infrastructure, or migrating to the cloud could actually lessen the burden from you, right? So I think these are the key considerations that you should have before you actually think, should I move or should I not move, right? And I think this brings us to the end of our session, and I hope you found the session very valuable. And if you haven't checked our video on what is cloud computing, please click on the link above or below, and you should be able to get access to the video. And thank you for taking your time to actually watch this video. And please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you love the content that we're actually creating. Please let us know what you think and give us recommendations. Thank you.